For me, belonging is really my ability to be alone and feel safe to be my authentic self, but not feel lonely while I'm doing it. And it being my job, holding space on Zoom, traveling in person, whatever it may be.
Hey, Loren.
Hi, Kelsey. Did my voice just go up there? Hi, Kelsey.
It did. Ooh.
Sorry.
we going through another level of, yeah. Okay. So, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
Yeah, I am doing great.
You paused for a minute.
Because
you're doing well.
I want to say great, and I feel like I hear Jen's voice in the back of my head.
We need another word
every time I say great.
Yeah, another word for great.
But I'm doing well. We just got off a Memorial Day weekend, so I had a nice weekend with friends and family and lots of activities. So I feel pretty settled in all that.
Lots of chill time and barbecue.
Yeah, I don't know about the chill time, but lots of barbecue, lots of cocktails.
Yeah.
How about you? What did you do?
I went to the Indianapolis 500 race. First time in my life. I have never been to any kind of race. 350,000 people. It was a spectacle. Unbelievable. And it was really quite something to see.
So where did you stay? Did you stay in a camper? Did you stay in a hotel?
No. My sister and I'm beyond that. I don't sleep on the ground and stuff like that anymore. My sister and her family live in Bloomington, Indiana, which is less than an hour south of Indianapolis. So I was there, and then we got up at 5 a.m. to make an early drive, went up to the race. You tailgate just like a football game. You might at an institution, you tailgate, park outside, et cetera, but it did pour. So we were inside the car for a bit, and then, afterwards you wait for the traffic to leave while you tailgate some more and then go home. Yeah.
I like it.
Football.
What's tailgating inside of a car while it's raining? Everyone's in their own seats with their beer.
For me, it was a nap.
Perfect.
We had gotten up very early after I'd been up very late, and it was raining. And I thought, this is a pretty good place to go to sleep. So I did.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad the race actually happened, because there was a moment I was thinking of you
too.
During the rain, and I'm like, I'm not sure we're actually racing today, but I'm glad it happened for you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you want to tell our listeners who our two guests were today?
Yes, we had two guests today. Lisa Walker, who you will hear us perhaps in the episode refer to as Walker. That was her suggestion. You can just call me Walker. Lisa has 25 years of experience as a facilitator and a trainer. She was formerly director of equity and inclusion at UC Berkeley for, I think, almost 30 years or something like that. Long time. Also a graduate of Berkeley. She's currently a senior consultant with the Equity Group Consulting, which is, I've come to learn, one of the oldest firms in this field, been around 35 plus years. Big organization, 250,000 clients, 2,000 organizations. And what I love, I saw their slogan, if you will, is making the business case for inclusion before diversity was common language. So she's doing that work with Fortune 500 companies, educational institutions, et cetera. And then we also had with us DJ Pepito, who is the Senior Director for Research and Innovation at SCUP, which stands for the Society for College and University Planning. SCUP, by the way, is one of the partners in the research that we've been talking so much about over the last few years. She's been there last few episodes. She's been at SCUP for about a year and a half. And SCUP, not incidentally, represents 600 colleges and universities across North America. She previously was at NACAS and was there about 6 years. She did research and strategy and ended up as the chief learning officer before making the move to SCUP. Previously, she was employed at UC Berkeley for almost 3 years as a commercial space coordinator. And I think pretty cool. She was also the student body president for the Associated Students, the student government there when she was a student. So really great folks and really good insights.
I always like to tell people DJ was the student body president that hired me. UC Berkeley. Right. So DJ hired me, and then I hired DJ twice and would hire her again whenever that opportunity comes along. She's fantastic.
Yeah,
so,
she's great.
Yeah, they were both good people. I think, as we were waiting for our episode to upload, the the way I would describe this episode is it was a very kind of deep thought conversational episode where I think my soul feels good when it's done. But my brain is like, what did we talk about? Did we come to any conclusions? Yep. My brain has like 1,000 things in it. What did you think?
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate though you and I have talked earlier about our confidence that once we get some distance from these, they always come together. But I appreciated your reflection on that because I was feeling the same thing. And, when you get smart people like DJ and Lisa together, there are lots of ideas to get on the table. And I kind of will sort of make sense of it as it reveals itself to us. But there were so many good comments, and I won't spoil the episode for people, but they went deep quickly. And what DJ offered as framing right at the beginning and what Lisa offered as sort of helpful ideas for supervisors in the middle of the episode, I think will be very, very clear despite really having come to those around lots of different angles. So I agree with you. And it was great.
Well, let's jump right in and let people feel good and let their brains go in 1,000 different directions. All right, here we are for another episode of Campus Confidential.
Here we are.
I mean, it's been a minute since we recorded, so I'm excited to have a conversation. And we have two wonderful people with us today to join us. So today's topic, Loren, I think is sense of purpose.
Yes, sense of purpose, sense of belonging. Let's conjoin them because they're just so important together. Yeah.
That's right. I think when we set out, and I say that almost jokingly because just yesterday, Loren and I were going back and forth, and he's like, "Are we talking about sense of purpose or sense of belonging? I'm not sure where are we." And
let's do them both.
Let's do them both. Well, really, when we really looked at the research and the feedback we were getting is this idea of sense of purpose and then belonging fitting into that, along with well-being and and diversity, equity, inclusion, and how do you really think about all of those pieces together? And we had the conversation that if you're a frequent listener, hopefully you heard last episode, really talking about belonging, and then really thinking about our conversation today with Lisa Walker and DJ Pepito. It's like, how do we think about belonging in a global sense, systems as individuals, in our roles, et cetera. And so I think really that's where we hope to spend some time today. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. I agree. And, I was just noticing some research, the McKinsey, the consulting and research group said that 70% of employees define their sense of purpose through work. That may be a whole nother conversation, but consequently, it's really important, given our workforce conversations. And then we knew from our previous episode that when employees feel like they belong, they're 9 times more likely to believe that they're treated fairly, and 5 times more likely to want to stay at the organization a long time. So these sense of purpose, sense of belonging things are really important for workforce conversations. And so I think if we can maybe include both of them in today's conversation, it'll be richer.
Yeah, I totally agree. And man, work as your identity, that is a whole nother episode. I feel like I've been unwinding work as my identity for the last, years, still working on it. So what I'd love to start with, Lisa Walker, folks heard about you in the intro from Loren, but can you give us a little bit about your journey to where you are today and why this topic matters to you specifically?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And, I'm just going to step right into what you're already offering with sense of purpose and belonging. I like bringing those two descriptors together because sense of purpose to me is an empowerment phrase. That's about how I see myself, what I'm bringing to the workplace, what I'm contributing through work to the world, my sense of giving my gifts. So thank you for that. So for me to latch on to as a place, which is really where I am in my work, is increasingly inviting myself and other leaders to step into that empowerment, to connect with that purpose, that, that idea that no one can motivate you, others can inspire you, but that motivation comes from within. And to put that in conversation with this word belonging in this context, as a way of thinking about the environment that, here I have my sense of purpose, and then I come into the workplace. I come on campus. I come into my leadership role. And that's how does my sense of purpose, how do I feel it is met by that workplace, by that campus, in my leadership experience day to day? How much of my purpose do I feel like is being seen and recognized and valued? How am I growing? What am I expressing? I just really appreciate that you put those two things in conversation, because I think belonging can be such a conversation about, is this institution making me feel like I belong? And that's important. I mean, I showed up here to talk about that. And at the same time, there's also my own empowerment to express who I am, what I'm doing, how my life connects to the work that I'm doing. And, you said, how do I come to that, Kelsey? It's been my entire life's path, right?
Yeah.
I worked on the campus that I went to school at. So I was a student there in the 80s and came back to work there in the early 90s and worked there for 25 years. And for a lot of that time, I was trying to make things external to myself change.
And say more about
and
that.
I'm still interested. Well, just came into an environment where even as a student who was tutoring other students, I was like, there's something going on here where my fellow students' grades are good, but they don't want to come back. So what is this experience on this campus, and what do I need to do? Listen to that, right? What do I need to do to change it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so wanting that, and the word belonging wasn't even part of the conversation at that time. The conversation was only just the D for diversity. We hadn't gotten to add equity or inclusion or now belonging. Mm-hmm. And so seeing that, so now to take that diversity conversation all the way into belonging, and, to recognize that I was still someone very interested in us agreeing on changes we want to make and making them, but also having an experience where I feel so much more empowered at this stage in my life to be in my own purpose, to trust that others will connect to me or not, and that I will still move forward with the work that I believe life is asking me to do.
Mm-hmm. Was there a moment in time that started to click for you, or is it just an evolution along the way?
I'll share one early moment, and then I just want to say it's still like layers of an onion. It's still coming into focus for me. I think it's going to be my work the rest of my life. And at the same time, it was early in my career as a professional on campus when we first started in a campus climate survey kind of way, asking students to score their belonging. And other, I identify as African-American and Black, and other folks of color in leadership roles, and folks who were also allies to that conversation started saying, but especially my close colleagues on campus started saying, wait a minute, now if you ask me if I belong, I'm going to assert that I belong. Do I belong? Yes, I belong. Mm. We were like, how do we read this data if we have this awareness that some students are answering that question out of what we would call like resiliency and grit, and saying, yes, I belong. And then realizing that that's a two-part question. There's the part of myself that I assert, like I'm going to come to this place and I'm going to belong.
That's right.
And that also could be met on, through policies, through institutional ways of being, that really help that not to be a struggle or a fight, but help that to be more of a flow and a collaboration.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That assertion you make is either affirmed by what you meet or confronted in some ways, I suppose, too, based on the actions of the organization and the people and the community, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
I wonder, we're talking about purpose and belonging as maybe close cousins here, but maybe slightly different constructs. And you, Lisa, went a little bit there by talking about purpose as something I have. It's going to be hard for another person or another organization to give it to me. I wonder if each of you would maybe give those two ideas some dimension, maybe starting with you, even DJ. When you think of purpose, sense of purpose at work, and a sense of belonging, what is a sense of purpose to you? And then what does belonging look like when you feel it in a workplace? And then we can go there a little bit too with you, Lisa.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to answer it in reverse. So I think to define belonging first for me, and I'm experiencing this and navigating it in real time, trying to kind of settle into a new role that I just, took on within the last year and a half or so, getting to know a new group of colleagues, a whole different pocket and audience of higher education, working with a new association now. And so I think where I'm at right now, and this definition might change tomorrow and next week again, but for me, belonging is really my ability to be alone and feel safe to be my authentic self, but not feel lonely while I'm doing it. And it being my job, holding space on Zoom, traveling in person, whatever it may be. I think I've been reflecting a lot on just sentiments of loneliness across workplaces right now. The resettling of hybrid work environments, of, organizations wanting to open their doors to becoming more remote or more hybrid. What does that mean for everyone who's used to a certain way, right? And I think it's just really hard right now in that shuffle to not feel lonely or lost in it. And I think that's where that sense of purpose piece comes in and is so critical, because I can be very clear on what's motivating me to show up to my Zoom every day, which is essentially my work being remote, right? But I also have to reframe and hold space for the collective purpose of the team, being in a leadership role and understanding that this setup of our team environment may not be working for everyone, or may be really awesome for some and not for others. And how do we continue to clarify the purpose of individual roles and how that really comes together in a somewhat ambiguous way? I think we're going beyond kind of organizational missions, and that came out in a lot of the data that we had in the survey too, right? Is higher ed employees feeling very aligned or still wanting to stay within higher ed because of the mission of institutions. But can we hold space for people's sense of purpose that may not necessarily align or be in conflict with the mission, but is still very valuable and personal to them? How do we make all of that fit and puzzle together? Yeah, continuing to navigate that.
Yeah, I appreciate how you connected this sense of belonging, even when I'm remote. And because maybe I'm remote and not around all these people all the time, my sense of purpose has to be clear so that I can keep coming back and engaging with this community of colleagues. I appreciate that connection. Lisa, anything to add to that from your perspective?
Well, yeah, DJ, I just love this connection to loneliness in the conversation. I think that's just so powerful because I think we're collectively aware that, it's something that's happening to us for humans, not just at work, but just in life. And so to bring that into this conversation is really sitting powerfully with me as a way of naming, even as I was preparing to come and join you all for this conversation and thinking about belonging, I was kept hovering around other words that loneliness gives me access to. So you say loneliness, and then now I'm thinking about connection. Right? Just our deep need to be connected. So yeah, I think I'm going to have more to say about it, but right now I'm just happy to have the thought to chew on. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote that down, and the interesting part to me about loneliness is I feel like I've spent a lot of time thinking about being in a room full of people and still feeling lonely. And DJ, what I heard you say was being alone and not feeling lonely. And so it added this layer to me of it really, and then I wrote down external versus internal in this conversation, because what I feel like it's this play of what am I expecting from others to give me so I feel like I belong? And what am I and what expectations do I have of myself that I bring to the table to create a space for belonging for both myself and others? So this feels like this complexity of internal, external, what I need, what others need, loneliness, people around me, people not around me. And it's all, I feel like it's all these balls have been tossed in the air and we're like, I'm not sure where any of them land. Maybe that's just me. It might be my only feeling.
Well, and can I add to this? No, it's not. You're not the only one. There's at least two, because me too.
Okay.
But can I add too that, yes, in this moment, like I heard you introduce it through the lens of remote work, but where I automatically connected it to being the only one in a group of something. Am I the only one who identifies as a woman? Am I the only multiracial person in a Black setting? Am I the only person over, almost 60 in the room? And those ways and through a lens of belonging that, it can be lonely. And, that belonging gets at that question of wanting connection. In the multiple ways, like I hear you naming some of those ways too, Kelsey, but those multiple ways that we might feel set apart or like we're the only one in a setting.
Do you believe that when there's a strong sense of purpose, it's clear to you that you can draw on that to get over the challenge of when you don't feel a sense of belonging? I mean, I'm curious how you're thinking about purpose relative to belonging in a setting then.
Well, I think purpose, for me, I don't know. I'm interested in what you all say, but what comes up for me right now is I think if I'm clear on my purpose, it gives me the opportunity to make decisions that feel more connected for me versus me searching for the external solution or blaming the external on my inability or my not feeling connected. Does that make?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if we also, I'm just playing with this idea right now, like there are two levers, and one in this conversation, we can move from internal to external. And the other one, we can move from sense of purpose to like a shared sense of belonging. Like, so I can be very internal in my purpose, come to work and use that. What came up for me, Loren, when you asked the question is, yes, I feel like I have done that even at different points in my career. And is it in some ways a setup for burnout to show up and only rely, so I need those levers to shift. I need to be able, maybe we all need to be able to, like, maybe it's a strength, that we would want for all of us to be able to shift to that individual, that self sense of purpose. But then as needed or often or regularly, depending on our needs and our personality and how we were raised and our leadership style, to put in the mix, feeling connected to a shared sense of purpose, so that I don't have that burnout of trying to make it happen for myself completely in my own world in this larger setting.
Yeah, 100%. And it strikes me, this is, okay, so what's clear to me now in this conversation, this is a really complex kind of thing, this internal, external, this belonging, this purpose. Also, 70% of employees, say McKinsey, defining their sense of purpose at work. But as DJ, you pointed out, work is changing. And if you're reliant on work in a way to find that sense of purpose, the relationships, the proximity, the geography, the frequency has all changed. The other thing in that McKinsey research, which was very interesting, is 70% of employees, 70% of employees are now reflecting on or questioning their sense of purpose post-COVID. COVID had this sort of instigated something, what do I want to do with the rest of my life kind of thing. So what is the role of work in defining purpose when so many people are questioning what their purpose is? And how do we find our way to creating more meaningful, productive work environments? And to your earlier point, I think, Lisa, too, that I think this research was pointing out what you were saying, which is work cannot give you a sense of purpose. Its responsibility maybe is to create, while you are choosing to come to work, a meaningful kind of form of engagement, but the purpose has to be inside. The belonging is something I have responsibility for, maybe. The sense of purpose is yours. But if we can align that sense of purpose with what's meaningful at work, now we have some magic. So many people are questioning that. That's a lot of stuff. I don't really have a deep question there, but I guess what I'm really wondering is if you feel like there's a moment here where what work gives you and the shifts that you were getting at DJ, if there's something moving here that we've got as employers need to pay attention to and do something different with. A lot in there. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Yeah. But also the reason why I love working with you, Loren.
Well, thank you.
I love your questions
with you too.
And your reflections. What's been coming up for me a lot just listening to all of you speak is a couple weeks ago, a past episode when you guys interviewed Dr. Mordecai Brunley. Mm-hmm. And he said something like, systems are going to do what they were designed to do.
That's exactly right.
And so this idea of external, internal, and the responsibility, I think it's okay to acknowledge that they are equally important and necessary to create these environments that are going to work best for everyone that's in it, right? Something I've been experiencing. So in the middle of the pandemic, I was a part of a team that I'd been working with for several years already. I was one of the first remote employees that was hired. So that was an interesting piece to already navigate pre-pandemic. But, going in a few years with everyone, when the pandemic hit and we all went more virtual, we were much more prepared to handle that as a working team and dynamic. Now I'm experiencing a situation where I'm joining a team that went through all of that together, and I'm kind of coming in after the fact. And so I've been thinking a lot about how do you prepare organizations at scale to continue opening and setting themselves up for, diversity in the workplace via, geography not mattering and being able to take in more talent from anywhere across the country. But what does that mean in that onboarding experience and cultivating belonging? How do you prepare or retrain existing staff to also rethink how they work and what they're doing in how they show up to work to be able to have more capacity and awareness of the importance of building those relationships with newer teammates who are joining, right? There's something to say about how relationships need to become more fluid in all of this, right? If we're not going to be able to rely on that main physical location that brings everybody together, how do we also not let this idea of a virtual hybrid work environment take off so much that work just becomes more transactional? Because now we're also fighting multiple things at once. You're trying to make a setup to open up more belonging, but at the same time, the nature of that is actually really acting against you by not being able to build better relationships.
Well, I'm thinking about, Loren, I heard you say what is happening for us at the level of the workplace and organization right now. And we're naming the complexity of belonging and sense of purpose. And it is complex, and we don't seem to, it doesn't look like we're getting out of these rapid transformational moments that, that ask us to hold this complexity. And yet I am looking for some elegance or some simplicity, where I'm looking for where we can build some momentum. And, so what about just holding that, that self lens and that group lens and keeping the question fresh? Because I don't think belonging nor sense of purpose, neither of those are static in my experience. My own belonging, what I have wanted from my workplace, what I wanted from my campus to feel like I belong there, evolved as I evolved. So did my sense of purpose. Right. And that's happening for every colleague that I'm sitting with. So what if we invite that question regularly? Hey, I don't know what that would be. Twice a year, once a year, say to each other, what's is some version of What's going on with your sense of purpose right now? Oh, wow. And hearing everyone and then naming for ourselves what's collective in that.
I love that.
I think we're missing an opportunity with so much complexity. The workplace, I keep thinking like that's one place we should be able to have a little more clarity. My family, forget it. Relationships, they're so complex and they go on for decades. But at work, if we can really hear each other, we can in a moment name, here's what we are as a group here to do. And we'll check in again. If I'm the leader, I want to say, we'll check in again about this. I won't wait too long to ask you again, but can we keep showing up to the moment where we're naming what is happening for ourselves and our sense of purpose, how that shapes the work we're going to do in this group, and then what we need for belonging in that context. And for me, in that way, belonging then starts to connect to psychological safety, to risk-taking, to trust, which is one of the biggest themes I hear with my clients. Can we just stay in the question instead of worrying about trying to arrive at a moment that I don't think is actually available.
Yeah, refreshing and honest. That's what that would be. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a calling all leaders opportunity right there to say, hey, keeping space for that. And it is part of leadership to keep and hold that kind of space. I wonder, Walker, if you might remember, it was a few years ago now. And it was right at the start of the pandemic. I had called you and we were talking about a conversation around the team conversation of diversity, equity, inclusion, and how do we think about unconscious bias in the workplace? How do we think about team dynamics in a conversation? And you had said, well, I don't know how we're going to do this. I think you were working through how do you do those conversations virtually, right? Because it had been in person, and there's the sense of feeling in community with people in person. So can you share kind of how that has played out for you, and maybe how you've been able to create community and space both in person and virtually?
Yes. And I there is a belonging connection because Kelsey, you're right. You and I were in conversation, maybe even before we were, sheltering in place, where once we were sheltering in place, I was like, well, my work is just done. There's nothing for me to do.
Like it's over. It's over. It's over. Everything's ended.
And then learning, in fact, that not only was it not over, but my work really blossomed as I thought about ways of, being with each other virtually and in these conversations. And for me, it connects, part of why I thought it wasn't going to work connects to my own strategy for managing belonging, which is that one of my big fears was, I went to campus to deal with things, and then I came home to escape from them. And so I was concerned about people talking from their homes about things that really mattered to them, and it blurring the boundary of their workplace and their home, their safe space. I didn't know if it would still feel, would it feel too intrusive? I hadn't yet caught on to the value of being able to turn off my camera and walk 5 paces to the right and be in my ideal setting for relaxation. But once I got over that, I started to recognize there were things that we could make use of. There is a way, really leaning into asking folks to take care of themselves when we are together in conversation. And if you can hear that that's the first agreement, it's not that I will take care of you. Sorry, listeners, if that lands on your ears a little harshly. Because we do want to take care of each other, absolutely. But first, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So, right. So,
fill your own bucket first.
Yes. All these half-filled bucket. I'm a chronic half bucket full water disher outer.
You're like, I'll water those other plants, even though I barely have any.
For so long, this goes right along with my lifelong learning about being in my own purpose is also really, I'm continuing to unlearn that habit of giving more than I have to give. So can we be on screen and say, like, you're like, I know how tough it is when someone won't turn on their camera. And yet, can that team member just manage that they have to have their camera off? And can we be okay with that and move forward enough that when they can turn their camera on and come back into the conversation, we've created a space for them to do that instead of either you're with us or against us by how you're showing up in this moment. You know, like if you get asked a question and it's not the right question for you, can we create a space where I can say, no, I can't answer that today, right? Where we let people take care of themselves in those ways, even virtually, as preparation for when we are together with our whole bodies, or as preparation for the next time we're together virtually, for just learning that, okay, this group is not going to kick me out if I do a few things that I need to do in this half an hour to take good care of myself in order to be as present as I can be. Those kinds of things have led me to really value, you know, sometimes I'd rather be in a Zoom room for some conversations and with some groups based on what their needs are. And I would have thought I would ever say that in a million years.
Yeah. If I can respond to that really quick. I love how you're naming that, Walker, because I think we underestimate the value that has on group dynamics by being able to just name it out loud. Like, it's very easy to go into a space assuming that everyone's like, okay, yeah, like, do what you got to do. We're professionals here. We don't need to micromanage people, whatever. But I was just having a conversation with a member this morning after a facilitation that we did. Lauren was there for it a couple weeks ago. And she had mentioned, you all just saying, hey, you have full-time jobs back at home, but we're here in the space together. You do what you need to do to take care of yourself, check your emails as you need to, gave permission for everyone to not have to pass judgment, to feel more comfortable to engage, to not feel guilty, because that layer of guilt of having to step out and maybe come back in, and the fear of what other people are thinking of me in that is so important from that, like, cultivating community, belonging, safety. And I think that that's a tactic that's not utilized enough. And it's so simple to just be able to name it.
Well, and all of the research, whether it's the Coupa HR research that Andy and Jamie helped us with, or the E15 research that we did together and that Elise and Aaron helped us with, all talk about transparency, honesty, and care. And care is, I think, sometimes viewed as the soft sort of, anecdotal. If you get it, great. It's really critical to leadership and supervision and productive workplaces. And so what you're really talking about is caring enough to say, how are we doing here? What do you need? Are you feeling driven by, motivated by the work? Is there something you need that I can help with? Do you feel like this is a community that, all of those kinds of things you two are describing really are borne out in the research. People are looking for supervisors and leaders who give a darn and are interested in their lives. And so naming it is one of the ways you're transparent. I think I love that. I completely agree. So thank you for naming it.
And I just wondered too, is like, so maybe this is the devil's advocate in this piece, or my own stuff. But so it comes up for me is like, yes, let's name it. Let's give space. And how do we create an environment that is energetic and involved enough that people want to be there, and their time, it is priority for their time to be in that space with each other, whatever that is. Because here's where, so I'll play the other side of this, like listening to y'all talk. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, we do that. Half the people have their camera off. Half the people leave the room during this part of the conversation. There's no momentum. We have to revisit and talk through everything that we just talked through because people weren't paying attention. And how do we move forward as a collective, or in a way that, right? I don't know. How do we honor that? Because I'm here for it, and still move as a group in a way that works.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, Kelsey. And, what if, so first of all, no easy answers.
Right.
And,
no.
Right. The questions stay complex. And, but what about thinking about how we're showing up in our leadership around it as more of a dimmer switch than a light switch. So it's not like, well, I'm going to turn off asking people to, like, you know, it's anything go, like, not even that we're saying anything goes, but can it be like more of a dimmer switch where if I'm the convener, the facilitator, if I'm the supervisor, the manager, I'm thinking about how to turn up and down the according to, you know, based on what I'm also observing, based on feedback, based on maybe what the topic of the conversation is, you know, and also being transparent about this with the group. Like, hey, folks, I know we really do need to take care of ourselves, and, you know, and at the same time for this conversation, if it, you know, like just kind of making the ask, it's really important to me. It would be really helpful to me if everyone who's able would come on camera and hang with me for these next 15 minutes, if you can give me your full attention. And then knowing that the next meeting, you know, like, so can it be more of a dimmer switch than like on or off? Mm-hmm. And the meeting is just one example, but can we kind of hold the whole thing? Like, this conversation about belonging is not like a to-do list for us of a million things that we have to do so that each individual feels like they belong, but it's something that we can lean into as much as we're able, you know, because we're all growing and evolving together in our leadership and in our shared purpose. And we want this other thing to grow with us too. So instead of it being like just a new set of rules, a different set of rules that maybe even aren't working, you know, can we see ourselves, this is that idea of toggling back and forth between different strategies, between a self and group lens, between purpose and belonging.
It's almost like the consistency lies within the flexibility or that continuum that you're talking about. Because I think there's something to be said for consistency that builds trust. And what I'm hearing is the consistency is we're keeping the questions, we're keeping the space open, we're keeping things fluid, is the consistent nature versus a very rigid box, if you will, whatever the box is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I may be packaging, just to sort of loop back to the beginning, something that doesn't want to be packaged. But if you have a strong sense of purpose, you want to participate. And if there's not participation, maybe you have to wonder, is there a feeling of belonging? So as a leader, as a supervisor, right? And I like your dimmer switch example. I think of things sort of as patterns versus incidents. If there's a pattern of disengagement, or the camera's off all the time, despite my having named, I'd really love us all to be together here visually. Then that care attribute you talked about is, I have to check in on this person. I'm noticing that Loren is just not engaging. There's the belonging question. Maybe you discover that I'm not feeling very motivated or a sense of purpose to come here. And so what I appreciate about the example, and maybe the power of belonging and purpose as cousins here, is it can cover so much ground in the relationship with employees. One, you have to bring, the other I want to offer. And, you know, it just allows us so much room. And that can be done, I think, to your point, Kelsey, those two things can be done consistently. If done consistently, I suspect that we see less turnover, we see more productivity, we see more fun, we see fluid relationships, like you're saying, DJ, too. You know, so I love the power of that example in those two cousins together.
Yeah, more care and connection. I mean, this is what I think DJ did for the conversation by bringing in the loneliness. More, all of that sounds like connection and care to me.
Yeah. And by the way, last year, the Surgeon General of the U.S. said that he called loneliness an epidemic. And, you know, we talk about the prevalence of loneliness among college students, but you raised, rightfully so, I think it's 40% of adults report feeling, maybe it's 25 to 6, I can't remember the age range, but it's a very high percentage of adults that are lonely. And it's a real issue.
Mm-hmm. I was sort of begs the question, I wonder who's doing research on who feels lonely at work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the next research question. Or I'm sure it's out there. Maybe we just need to use the Google machine. DJ, it makes me think, you know, you've gone from the university to association work. When you think about kind of the work that you're doing as an association and association professional in a membership-based organization. How does this play into that world and the work that you're doing for others, with others?
Which part? Belonging as a whole?
Yeah. I mean, I think associations are a place for, I think back connections, right? Associations are a place where you create a network. It's almost like you join an association because you feel like you belong there or you look to belong. So how are you, what's the sense of purpose? What's belonging? Is that evolving for associations? Does it matter?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that question is very critical right now. I will say, as a personal mission, I am really trying to reassess the association landscape as a whole and the concept of membership belonging, right? If you belong to one, why not belong to all of us in higher ed? Because we have helpful resources, connections we can give you. I think there's some magic in what associations have done over time to build communities for the professionals like them, at least particularly for higher ed, right? I think we're in a space now, again, given all of the changes and impacts that we've seen from pandemic to hybrid to, shifting students, that I think associations should really be questioning, why are we going to continue to guardrail those resources for just other professionals that we're used to? And how are we able to mirror the collaboration, the cross-departmental relationships, the community of belonging aspects? If we want our members to model that on campus, how can we as association leaders do the same? There's so many layers that go into that, of like mindset of abundance versus scarcity, and what's going to motivate collaboration to happen or partnerships to be made across associations and whatnot. But at the end of the day, if our purpose is to help develop and support professionals in higher education, I think we need to look beyond our departmental silos and really think about what's going to make an impact on cultures on campus.
Well, I have to say, DJ, I love that you're taking on the entire not-for-profit association landscape. Now that's a sense of purpose. Good for you. Good for you. I love that. It's awesome.
I'm here for that.
We're yeah, right. We're bumping up against time here, and I just want to say how grateful I know we are that you've spent some time with us. You've helped us remember that, maybe simplistically stated, purpose is internal and belonging is communal. And they're really important both in a workplace, that good leaders will name it, that they'll show up to the moment and check for those things in their community. I love the idea of leadership as a dimmer switch, that it's not an on or off thing. It's a dimmer, kind of you move in and out of kind of situations and contexts. I love that. And that loneliness, naming loneliness as one of the things, actually, this is such an opportunity. Purpose and belonging are such an antidote to the loneliness epidemic that we really feel. So it's hopefully this podcast, this episode helps folks who are thinking about these things remember they're not the only ones, and to feel less lonely in that quest. And what you've done for us and are doing for listeners is very, very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you too. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
There was a radio character on this radio show I used to listen to in the morning, the morning drive time thing, when that was, maybe it's still a thing. I don't know. I listen to the news now, but he was this character who would always, he had this voice. He'd be like, yeah, how you doing? I just flew from ATL to ORD, heading out to LAV. And he had this whole, that's kind of what we were doing. Louisville, and he just named airports because that's all he saw. Yeah, heading out to ORD from LAV. See you over in GLC, and before I hit you up in BOS,
That's amazing. I mean, okay, so this is our extra credit.
Oh, okay.
Are we ready for some extra credit?
Sure.
I mean, what are your summer plans? Do you have summer plans? Well, we're kind of in the middle of summer right now. So what's it like?
Lots of conferences. I think you were saying you have the same thing, which is okay, but I'd rather have fewer of the work trips. I don't have a lot of big trips planned. Mostly it's we have a place in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan on Lake Michigan. There's no television and there's no phone. It's got everything else. So we know it's got heat and plumbing and all these things. It's built on Lake Michigan. Wi-Fi, it's not a cabin in the woods with an outhouse, but it is really my happy place because it's a place to completely unplug. It's a small town on Lake Michigan that has sort of one of everything you need: a little wine tasting room, a hardware store, a grocery, 2-screen movie theater. So it's livable. It's quiet. It's just read books, relax, watch the water, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the trip that's planned. We get up there a couple of times. I am going to Milwaukee area for a series of concerts. There's something in I think it's Oshkosh or Appleton called Mile of Music, which is literally a mile of stages and venues of music. So I'll go to that. And other than that, just kind of projects around the home and enjoying home. What about you?
When you are home, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of work conferences. I don't know. I'm trying to be excited about it.
I can hear it in your voice and I feel it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm excited about the people. I just think, when you are involved in a number of different things. Yeah. I think the other piece is some of these conferences start on the weekends. So it's just,
oh my gosh,
you're traveling on Saturday,
flying on a Saturday or Sunday. Yep. Me too.
I don't know. I feel like
is that a higher ed thing?
I think
or is
it
that
is.
Other industries too, weekends?
I think it's a higher ed thing. I don't know if it was like people felt guilty being gone from campuses for so long.
I know.
But at some point, I don't know, but I'm over it. Maybe we need to start a new campaign of.
Well,
and I think
it's a higher ed thing.
Yeah.
There was a day you fly over Saturday, it's cheaper, right? But that's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Or hotels maybe are cheaper. I don't know. But it asks people to work on the weekends a lot. And I think too, you and I might still have academic brain, which is fall semester, spring semester, or quarters, right? And then summer should be less stuff. So at least this is true for me, I think. But so I still think in academic ways. So when my summer is so busy, it's kind of like, wait a minute, I expect that in September and May, not July.
Yeah, I always had conference services as part of my portfolio.
Yeah,
so,
me too,
that was busy. There were still those 2 a.m. calls in the summer. But I think I'm just to the point where it's like I really would like summer, like the ability to be home on the weekends and But and I think we're giving people a taste of the grass is always greener when you're on the. Maybe we're giving the opposite, but I think it's true when you need to do a couple of. You try to eliminate ones that aren't important or where you need to be, but. The reality is the way the associations are set up for higher education and the way in which we do work, when you have, the chief business officer, the chief planning officer of campus, you have chief food service person, chief auxiliary person, and they're meeting all summer long, you kind of got to be there.
That's right. Yeah. That's a really good point. And so, plus you have accounts to visit. And, in my case, I'm also doing some business development. So you have all of these things sort of in that mix, in addition to conferences. It creates for a busy life. But I feel you. I in my mind, it's because it's summer. I mean, I'm not, look, there are times in year in life and jobs, you just sort of do what you got to do. Because it's summer, I kind of feel like, there should be less of that. But that's a me problem.
It's a you problem. It's a us problem. But I'm sure we'll find some things. We're running a 4-mile race on 4th of July. So
nice.
Little Towson Town
parade. What is that? That's not a 5K or a 3K or
no. It's just
what is that?
4th of July 4-miler.
Awesome. Is that fun? Will that be fun? Does that count as fun?
I think so. I like to have a good holiday race in the morning and then, all the food and drinks to follow for the rest of the day.
And do you have a trip anywhere or trips or poolside plans or anything like that?
We have a couple trips to the beach. So, on the East Coast, everyone just refers to it as the beach. You can decipher for yourself which beach I might be going to.
And at Long Beach. Beach.
Beach. Yeah, that's right. A couple trips to the beach. So that'll be nice. And
good.
Hope everyone has a great summer.
Yeah, right.
Okay. See you next time.
Campus Confidential is presented by Compass Group, produced by Corey Inscoe, with your hosts Kelsey Harmon Finn and Loren Rullman.